God, I hate all these mosquitoes. Did I have a nail a second ago? Oh, what's up gamers? Don't mind me, I'm just fixing this cupboard here, but these mosquitoes keep getting in my way. You know what? Why don't I take a break and look at a game full of bugs? And I'm not talking about glitches. Hollow Knight started on Kickstarter and was shown to be a Metroidvania with quite a unique art style and direction, with it being developed by Team Cherry, and the lead developers being Ari Gibson and William Pellin. Though Jack Vine and David Kazi played a huge part in the game's development as they helped with programming, and Christopher Larkin helped by composing the amazing music found throughout the game. Team Cherry's most notable previous work would be on Hungry Knight, which you might notice has a lot of similarities with the characters and art style of Hollow Knight. Through Hungry Knight, the player has to kill enemies to keep recharging their depleting health, which is quite a unique concept. Though it didn't resonate with players as it was released on Newgrounds to a user score of 1 star out of 5, but after a couple of indie game jams, they came across one with the theme of Beneath the Surface, and even though they missed the deadline for the event, they kept thinking about it. As you might have guessed by now, they combined this theme with the characters from Hungry Knight. They wanted the world to be about a kingdom that had fallen from mysterious circumstances, and upon abandoning the idea of refilling your health constantly, they renamed the project to Hollow Knight, and eventually, it was released in February of 2017. Upon starting the game, you watch a cutscene of the player character returning to the kingdom of Hallownest. After a bit of platforming and exploring, you reach the town of Dirtmouth, which could be considered your hub in this game, though I only say this because a few NPCs you talk to are located here. In these starting moments, your only goal is to explore, but after a while you learn that you need to open up the Black Egg Temple to take on the Hollow Knight and enter their mind to defeat what is infecting the kingdom of Hallownest. Now, hold on a second. I said take on the Hollow Knight, which you might expect to be your player character, as it's the name of the game. But in actuality, it's the final boss of this game, so to set them apart, I'm just going to call the player character the Knight. Throughout the kingdom of Hallownest are some insanely beautiful and unique locations. The game really surprises me on how big the world is within it, not just because it's a game about bugs, but due to how small the team was behind the project. My favorite area would have to be Crystal Peak, as it's such a beautiful and unique environment. It has a mineshaft aesthetic and is full of crystals, and yes, you could find this in a Mario or Sonic game, but for something like Hollow Knight, it stands out so much more, especially with the visuals. Another location I love is Greenpath, just because of how good it looks. There really is no other way to describe it other than the fact that it makes you want to explore the world. The final thing I want to mention is the locations further down throughout Hallownest. They just give off this sense of fear and loneliness without the game being necessarily scary. These environments are greatly enhanced by the music and sound design. Instead of going for a bombastic soundtrack like Mario, it goes for a much more somber approach to really drive home the idea of a fallen kingdom. The best comparison for it would have to be Breath of the Wild, as they both portray the feeling of emptiness. It never once feels like a track is out of place with the location you're exploring, and to be honest, I never really noticed the music, as it just blends in with the environment and the world of Hollow Knight. For the sound design, I love that depending on the location, you can hear certain sounds. Like in Crystal Peak, you can hear pickaxes hitting rocks, or in Royal Waterways, you can hear water dripping down. Of course, the environments and sound design don't mean anything if they aren't complemented by NPCs, enemies, and bosses. To start off with the NPCs, of course you have your standard shopkeepers who sell you items to help upgrade your health and attacks, but you also have some really unique characters, like Hornet for example. They start off as this mysterious figure who keeps running away as you try to get closer, but after 2 fights and a bunch of dialogue, they go from someone who doesn't see you fit to take on the Hollow Knight, to someone who trusts you to save Hallownest. There's also Quarrel, who's an explorer that lost his memory and was called back to Hallownest. As you meet him more and more, you grow attached to the character, and it hurts after he helps you defeat Monomon the teacher. He goes to Blue Lake with the achievement implying that these are his final moments before death. But you gotta mention the best character out of them all, Zoe, baby! Now it might seem like Zoe is just an aged up version of the Knight on the surface, but he's actually a great warrior who explores the kingdom of Hallownest, conquering it as he goes.
Gotta stop lying.
Alright, in actuality, he takes credit for the knight's work throughout the game, despite you having to save him a few times, and you're later able to fight him in the Colosseum, where there's a chance that his attacks just do no damage. For me, he didn't even get the chance to fight back, after I pummeled him over and over. Later with the DLC content, he gained a fan after he tells his stories across the world. You can then find a statue of him in their house. Upon dream nailing it, you enter a boss fight with a greatly exaggerated version of Zoe. I love how the more times you defeat him, the less the fan thinks of him, and the more adjectives his boss title gets. Another group of characters I want to mention are the Grubs. They could be counted as a collectible, but they seem super unique. You see, it starts with the Grub father, who's quite sad due to his children being missing. After finding a few in jars across the map, you gain rewards from him due to your kindness. And after beating the boss known as the Collector, who is clearly responsible for this due to the numerous jars of critters he keeps, you gain a map to all the grubs you can find. You might be thrilled from this as you're reuniting a family, but if you return after collecting every single grub and you have the reward from that already, you learn that you unknowingly helped the grub father to eat all of his children. This is just such a surprising turn of events for a small group of collectibles in the game, and I love that. On the other side of things, the enemies are great and have some really out-of-the-box designs considering that they're just bugs. I also love how they match to the environment that they're found in. In Greenpath, the enemies are covered in grass and moss. In Crystal Peak, they carry pickaxes and are merged with crystals. In the Fungal Waste, the enemies are mushrooms and have warts spreading on them, etc. I do have a problem with some of the enemies though, as even in the late game, they feel like damage sponges rather than fun and unique encounters. Though at that point in the game, it doesn't really matter unless you're going for the Hunter Journal. Oh yeah, the Hunter Journal. This is basically just a log that holds info on which enemies you've beaten so far, and if you do it enough times you get a piece of lore on them. Sadly, there isn't any real award for fully completing it, other than just more lore and an achievement. Now I know I keep saying the word unique a lot, but the bosses are really unique as well. I love the outlandish designs and characteristics they added to them, which make them feel more alive. My favorite would have to be the Dung Defender, as he's just a really campy character for this kind of game. I also love the Soul Master, as he's quite a challenging fight with all the things he throws at you, as well as the quick attacks. The Warrior Dreams are also such cool fights, taking the idea of a fallen bug and turning them into a duel to absorb their soul. This is also probably the best time to mention the 3 Dreamers that you need to defeat in quotations in order to beat the game. Lyrian the Watcher, Monomon the Teacher, and Hera the Beast are spread across the map. And I said defeat in quotations as all you have to do is dream nail them and then absorb their soul. I want to go more in depth here with the Colosseum of Fools, which I briefly mentioned earlier. This consists of 3 trials: the Trial of the Warrior, the Trial of the Conqueror, and the Trial of the Fool. The later 2 trials are a gauntlet if you aren't fully upgraded before taking them on, and even if you are, they're still such a challenge. This is such a cool yet challenging distraction from the main gameplay despite being quite similar. It also never feels like you're wasting your time, no matter how many times you go to retry it. This is due to the huge payout of Geo, this game's currency, each time you beat it. There were so many times I was close to the end during the Trial of the Fool just to die and be forced to retry it. Yet, I never got discouraged or frustrated. Since this game's a Metroidvania, the attacks and upgrades take much more of a main focus compared to a game like Mario Sunshine, for example. So, let's start with the knight's main weapon throughout the game, a nail. What? You could have just had him use a tiny sword or something, but no. Now, I get that the game's all about bugs and takes place within a tiny world, but seriously, a nail as a weapon? Come on. This is gonna be perfect to fix that cupboard finally.
Oh no, you got a nail.
The only upgrade that's truly needed is the Dream Nail, which is mostly used to fight boss variants, take on the Dreamers, make a small fast travel point, and get some of the game's endings. The nail truly gets good when you factor in the 3 nail art upgrades that are scattered across the map. Upon arriving at one of these locations, you can find a nail master who have some pretty cool looking designs. That aside, upon watching a cutscene, you unlock one of the 3 nail arts: Cyclone Slash, which is a charged rapid spinning attack, Dash Slash, which is a more powerful dash attack as the name implies, and the Great Slash, which is a giant charged attack. There's also the Nail Master who, in exchange for Pale Ore and Geo, upgrades your nail. Upon upgrading it for the final time to the Pure Nail, he steps outside and asks you to kill him. and I chose to walk right past him, to later find him with one of the nail masters, and as the achievement suggests, are in a relationship. I found it super cool that you're even able to do this, as many gamers would just do what he says, as that seems like the only available route, and due to how many games force you to kill a character just to finish a quest. There's also the spells and abilities you unlock along the way when playing through the game. The spells consist of everything that costs soul power to happen, for example focusing your health. But something interesting is that your projectile, dive, and blast spells can be upgraded by finding shade versions of them. Abilities are your basic upgrade to increase movement, like your dash, double jump, swimming, super dash, etc. These are such fun things to collect as they aren't just faster movement options, but they open up a ton of inaccessible zones that you might have seen in the past. Then it gives you this amazing aha moment when you realize that you now have what you needed. Of course, you also have the mask shards and vessel fragments, which add more health and soul to your arsenal respectively. I just want to say that there is no greater feeling than finally getting enough fragments to get it upgraded. That aside, the best and most unique upgrade that can be found in Hollow Knight has to be the charms. These upgrade anything about the knight. Faster attacks, health back when getting hit, faster health recharge time, everything really. A lot of charms do some really unique things though, which is always welcomed, like breaking upon death, changing your health type, and giving you minions to fight for you. The catch is in the fact that you have a limited amount of notches to equip these charms, so it comes down to mixing and matching the specific charms you think will be most effective against a boss. You could have more health in exchange for lower damage, or you can have an insane damage output but be forced to be more careful with when you get hit. You aren't totally out of luck though, as extra charm notches can be found around the world and be bought by Salubra. Salubra also gives you a blessing for collecting every charm in the game. This amounts to gaining soul while resting at a bench. This time starts to really add up too, so it sucks to see it be prevalent when it can easily be fixed. When you finally go to beat the game and enter the Black Egg Temple, there's 3 main game endings to go after, with a 4th secret one. The first requires you to not have the Void Heart unlocked, making it the easiest as you can essentially skip a fairly sized chunk of the game. At the Black Egg Temple, you just have to beat the Hollow Knight to play an ending, where our player character takes their place to hold in the infection. The second and third ending require the Void Heart to get, as at the start of the 4th phase, Hornet arrives to pin down the Hollow Knight. This is where the endings split off. You can either continue hitting the boss like normal, resulting in a similar ending to the first, but with Hornet merged with you as well, or you can dream nail the Hollow Knight to be able to take down the final boss, the Radiance. This is such a perfect way to end the game, as compared to every other boss which is dark and grimy. The Radiance takes on an angelic and divine look. The boss fight itself has a huge health pool and deals out a ton of hard to dodge attacks, yet it never feels unfair. The ending has the Void take down the Radiance, killing the Knight in the process, but effectively ending the infection that was spread across Hollow Nest. Now, you might be wondering about what that extra ending I mentioned was about. It's gained by finding Mr. Mushroom 8 times and getting any other ending, in which he can be seen flying into the air with "to be continued" popping up. Of course, Mr. Mushroom still isn't on the level of Zote the Goat, so overall, a mediocre ending. Upon getting any ending, you unlock Steel Soul mode, which is effectively the ultra nightmare of this game. If you die, you have to start all over again, which I honestly don't like when thinking about it, as this game's a Metroidvania that takes 20 to 40 hours to beat compared to Doom Eternal, which also had an Ultra Nightmare mode, with the base game taking 10 to 15 hours. What I'm trying to say is that this game is much more of a time sink, making Steel Soul seem daunting due to the potential of waste time. Though I haven't sat down and played it through myself yet, so my opinion could change. I do fully intend on still going through it though, due to the achievements, and the opportunity to see the character interactions that I missed the first time through. This is also a good time to mention the speedrun achievements, which, as you might have guessed, require you to beat and or complete the game in a relatively quick amount of time. These challenges don't seem too hard, so I definitely plan on setting aside some time to go after them. Moving on to the DLC, all packs were added entirely free to the player, which, considering the content added in the last pack, is amazing. The first and third packs were less exciting though, focusing on making the game feel more complete rather than adding major pieces of content. Though this is where that exaggerated fight of Zote I mentioned earlier was added, so big props to the developers. The Grim Troop was the second DLC pack release, and it added a large amount of content. You can start it by summoning the Grim Troop circus tent by lighting up the Nightmare Lantern near Dirtmouth. Upon entering the tank, you can meet with Grim to gain access to the Grimchild charm, and start the quest to upgrade it. Upon beating 3 Grimkin members, you return to Grim to upgrade the charm, repeating this process twice. After that, you challenge Troop Master Grim to a fight, and he is surprisingly tough, even when fully upgraded at late game. After defeating him, you have the ability to either banish the Grim Troop or face off against Nightmare King Grim. I chose to fight him as I wanted to see how hard it was, and I wanted to save banishment for my Steel Soul run. Nightmare King Grim is just a harder version of Troop Master, but that description doesn't do it justice, as it's such a hard fight, and gets super tense when you're about to beat him and you're at low health, and after 30 plus attempts when you finally defeat him, it is such an amazing feeling. But along with beating him, the circus disappears and you fully upgrade the Grim Troop charm. The bosses are definitely the biggest part of this DLC pack, which kinda sucks since the players have the choice to pass up on technically half of the bosses, and that half that they're passing up on is the best part. The final and best DLC pack is God Home, adding new endings, boss variants, boss rushes, and challenges. To start, once you gain access to God Home by dream nailing the Godseeker, you can encounter the Hall of the Gods. This is a place to re-challenge every boss throughout the game, and see which ones you still need to fight. There's 3 difficulties for the fights. Tuned, which is the same as the base game fights. Ascended, where the boss has more health, does double damage, and there's a possibility for stage hazards. And Radiant, which is the same as Ascended, but you die in 1 hit. Due to how many bosses there are, this will take forever to fully complete. And I'm okay with that, as it adds an extra challenge to help fans master the game. Next is the best addition of this DLC pack, the Eternal Ordeal, which is a secret fight to see how many Zotlings you can fight without dying. Upon defeating 57 of them, the counter turns gold and you unlock a secret menu screen. When looking at the Hall of Gods, you might notice you're missing a few despite having beaten every boss. This is where the Pantheons come into play. 3 of them are unlocked from the start, with the 4th needing the previous to be beaten for it to be unlocked. These are boss rushes consisting of 9 bosses that have already been beaten, with the 10th being entirely new, and at the midway point, there's a rest point. These are some pretty challenging boss rushes, but the true challenge comes in with the bindings. Extra add-ons to make these fights hell for you. Only 1 soul charge at a time, no charms, no nail upgrades, and only 4 pieces of health. These are mostly just to say that you did it, but if you use enough of them when beating the Pantheons, you gain access to the Lifeblood masks at the midway points I mentioned. This doesn't make the fights too much easier, but still helps a lot in the process. After beating all 4 Pantheons, you get to try the Pantheon of Hollownest, a boss rush consisting of the Ascended difficulty version from the Hall of Gods for every single boss in the game. This is truly hell when it comes to gaming challenges, not just due to the difficulty, but because an average run can take 40 minutes. If you're even able to get to the end and beat Absolute Radiance, you get one of 2 endings, either the void leaking out of the Godseeker cutting to a mysterious figure and Hornet about to duel, or if you gave the delicate flower to the Godseeker, the ending plays out similarly until the void starts to leak out of the Godseeker and onto the flower. A bright flash happens with the void and the Godseeker disappearing. For those who truly hate themselves, the Pantheon of Hollowness can be attempted with the bindings as well. I personally dread when I have to go do this myself, as I know it's going to be nothing but pain. Which leads into my next thing. I haven't finished the Pantheon of Hollowness or the Hall of the Gods yet, because of how long it takes to not just practice these fights, but to actually try over and over again until I finally beat them. But I do plan on setting aside the time to master these challenges, as it feels great when you do beat these insanely tough fights. Overall, Hollow Knight really surprised me due to how unique its art direction and characters were, but it also surprised me over the fact that I actually enjoyed it, which is very rare when it comes to me and Metroidvanias. The movement and attacks feel quick and powerful, and it's very rare that you get stuck when trying to figure out where to go next. So I would highly recommend Hollow Knight to anybody. Even if you're like me and don't typically enjoy Metroidvanias, still try it because you might walk away with a game that you really enjoy. You know what? That was a pretty nice break, but I gotta get back to fixing that cupboard.